Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat with Jesse. I am joined today by Dan Corazzi, Chief Executive Officer at Solifi. Thanks for joining me, Dan.
Good morning. Great to join you, Jesse.
No, it's great to meet you for the first time and great to have you on the program, sir. So looking forward to learning more about you and your career to date. So Dan, for the people who haven't had a chance to meet you, do you mind just kind of introducing yourself and your career so far?
Sure. I've been the CEO of Solifi now for 4 months, deep in after those 4 months. From a journey perspective and career perspective, I've been in business and technology for 35 years. So I grew up in the early days really with the sales and go-to-market focus. My first 12 years of my career were at Xerox Corporation back in the days with really a real focus on the customer. So that's kind of the fiber of who I am and has always bled through all of my executive positions. I did do a 8-year stint as a CEO of a SaaS provider in the procurement and supply chain space. So lots of times with boards and the P&L and fiduciary responsibility, all with a go-to-market focus. Have hit the global ranks through the years. Was an executive at SAP. I think everybody probably knows that name pretty well. Managed 3 large businesses, one in the manufacturing space, one in the banking, insurance, and capital market space, which is tangential to what goes on here at Solifi. And then I ran all of customer experience for North America. And then most recently, I was an executive at Jagger Corporation, again, a strong leader in the supply chain space as well. Exited that business and was sold to Vista and joined Solifi here in the beginning of this year. So my career has spanned business and technology for 35 years.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing. When you said Xerox, were you in Rochester?
I was up and down the East Coast. Rochester was the headquarters for Xerox back in the day. But as a go-to-market person, I was all over the place.
Okay. That's the airport I fly into when I go back home. So I think I hear certain upstate New York like companies. I'm like,
Xerox and Kodak up in that Rochester area.
Yeah. Who would think that'd be a hotbed for big organizations like that? But thank you for giving that background, Dan. And then let's talk Solifi, if you don't mind. Just kind of introduce the organization.
Sure. So for those who don't know Solifi, I mean, Solifi has been around a long time, although it's changed through the years, right? So when you look at traditional IDS, we're going back almost 50 years. The real inflection point started in 2019 when it became a TB, Tomo Bravo company from a private equity perspective. So that really started down a different path and journey with a capital sponsor. When you then fast forward a couple years into it, 2021 was a big year, as many might know, for Solifi with the acquisitions of Stuckey in North America and White Clark in Europe, which brought different pieces to the business together. When you added those together, all of them together, the company made the decision to become Solifi. Then there was operational efficiencies to put them all together, and then there was growth for a couple of years, and then through that growth, they grew the company and decided in 2024 to bring on a new sponsor. We were really excited to have TA Associates take over as the lead in December of 2024. Tomo Bravo still involved as a minority investor at this point, and TA and I joined forces together. They chose me to be the CEO, and we moved into 2025. General comment, as part of Solifi, I believe we have a really strong brand. I think our products are well known in the industry, and what I'm trying to do is infuse a lot of great employees who've been here for many, many years, with new blood and new people from the industry to come up with the right amalgamation to drive the company to future growth. So that's kind of what's happened on the journey over the last 5 years.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that, Dan. And then headquarters in Minneapolis still. You're located on the East Coast. I think you probably have people in majority of states.
Yes. Yes. We're as I think we all are, we're in a different world. That our North America headquarters is Minneapolis. We have probably more than half of our US people out of Minnesota. Our C-suite does sit in different places, although our CHRO and our COO do sit in Minneapolis. I'm here in Philadelphia. Our chief financial officers in Atlanta, our chief product officers in Europe. So I think, post-COVID, the world is different. For me, I'm a very customer-facing executive. A couple years ago, I spent 37 of 52 weeks in the air, and I believe in spending most of the time in front of our customers. So I don't think there's any real limiters with an office nowadays, especially in the Zoom and Teams era.
I mean, that's a great point there. I just, taking over such a tenured organization with some of those employees that you were talking about, having different people in other areas, like obviously you don't see that as a challenge from building a, strong camaraderie within the teams based on some of these tools. So I get it.
Yeah, I don't. I would like to comment on that. I don't see it as a challenge, although I would say, as executives, we all need to work on culture. For those of us who grew up in an office environment 5 days a week, and you constantly were interacting with each other to build that culture, I do think it's a challenge for all of us today. Whether your corporation only has 2 days of in the office or 3 days in the office, I think we have to work extra hard to build that culture, to get people to want to stay long term, to get them to interact, to feel that connection as part of a go forward. So although I don't think it's a problem, we have extra work to do.
Sure. I mean, I've been remote since 2010, and it was always one of those things where I made it a point to at least once a quarter go to home base, just to try, didn't have to, but it was just investing the time to show your face and everything else, because that's how I guess you continue to build those solid relationships that get you through, when work can become challenging.
I spend probably at least twice a month, maybe some months 3 times a month in Minneapolis, and certainly every month over in Europe. So again, although I live in Philly, it's kind of just a stop for me a couple days a week.
People think that I travel a lot, 37 or 52 weeks.
Yeah. And I don't, by the way, I don't use my extra frequent flyer miles for extra travel. After traveling on business, I like to be home, so it's good.
I can relate to that. The missus doesn't like it that much. It's like,
No,
oh, I
for
want to
sure.
go out, and I'm like, no, no, no,
For sure.
good, good. I don't need to go out. Well, look at all those nice meals you have. Yes, but when I'm home, thank you. So Dan, of all the organizations you could have chosen, why Solify?
Sure. I have some very specific criteria in any company that I look at. And so a couple things. One, I always want to make sure I'm with a company that is well respected by its clients and by the industry and has a pretty good brand. And I believe with all of my diligence and others' diligence, Solify has that. So it started with that for me, very important. Two, for the last I'm going to call it almost 20 years in the software that I've been in, I love being involved with mission critical applications. And so when you look at equipment, finance and auto finance and the wholesale business, working capital, these applications are mission critical to our customers. Their business doesn't run without it. So I love being in those kind of businesses. Third, I think in today's SaaS software world, your gross retention, how long you keep your customers, says a lot about who you are as a business. Solifi's gross retention is in that 97% range, which is benchmark in the industry. So that attracted me. And then two more things. One, I believe every great corporation is about really good people, and this company has a lot of really good people. It builds back on my previous comment on culture, so that's important. And lastly, TA is this great blend of growth investor while managing the bottom line and growing the business. And so I really believed in the thesis and the partnership I developed with TA early, and what our 1, 3, and 5-year plan is for the company. So it's for all those reasons, Jesse, why I joined. And now after completing my 4th month, I'm excited, if not more excited than the decision I made to come here.
Absolutely. And thank you for that explanation, Dan. And then I guess just moving on to the next topic, just thoughts of the equipment finance space or industry. Sure, you've touched the edges of it over your career, but now it's like you're into it. I believe you just had your UK summit last week. So now you get to see even that tighter knit kind of community there. So just what are your thoughts on, I guess, the equipment finance vertical compared to other industries you might have been in the
Yeah, I
past?
mean, when you look at it's a growing industry. I mean, when you stack rank it up against some of the biggest verticals, it may not have as large a TAM as others, for sure. But I see it growing. I see it changing. Having just come out of a couple of conferences with a lot of those folks, they're trying to see how the technology can increase their portfolio and grow their business. It's a traditional business, a lot of legacy platforms, a lot of legacy ways of doing business. So they're trying to, and we'll talk probably when you ask a few other questions, they're trying to, in some cases, convert to the cloud and make that journey to the cloud. I don't think any of us can have a conversation without AI. And so how do you use technology to advance that and be predictive and not reactive? So there is that. And from a Solifi and TA perspective, we're doubling down on equipment and kind of where we're going to go with it. Now, that's not to say we're not going to grow our auto, wholesale, and working capital, but the traditional equipment portion of the business is still going to be a growing piece for us.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And I guess we'll just transition right over to kind of like the trends in the industry and kind of what you're saying there. And what's amazing now is this is my 20th year in equipment finance. And I've typically been on the technology side my entire career as well, on the business development, revenue generating side. And it's amazing that probably still 50% of this industry still uses, well, it's actually probably still lives off spreadsheets.
For sure.
Nothing wrong with good old trusty Excel.
Oh, no, there's still a bit of that out there. So when I think of trends, I think across of probably different areas: people, product, process, operations, those kind of things from a trend. So I'll switch this one up a little bit and start with people. I think the trend here is you've got, again, a very traditional, it's a long-term space. And I think one of the trends is human capital change and bringing in more people, younger people with a different mindset. And how do you attract those people? And one of those ways that you attract those people is through technology, infusion of capital, and different ways to grow out an ecosystem. So we had lots of discussions in the conferences I've been at about that change in the people that are being brought in. Obviously, I touched on technology. Companies have to move much more quickly. I mean, we've had customers and we have prospects who have been sitting, and I'm not kidding when I say this, on 40, 50-year-old legacy platforms. Some might say, making a switch to the cloud for a CIO or a CISO is a risk. I would argue sitting on a legacy platform is a much bigger risk than making a jump to the secure cloud and now and in today's day and age. So I think that's a trend. I think that although there's, and we may touch on this in the future, there's some uncertainty in the markets. If you look at lease and loan portfolios and where everybody's going, that NAV and where it's at is still growing, and more people are still loaning items and loaning equipment and loaning autos. More and more people are leasing, and so some of the uncertainty of the markets is not overly impacting where that portfolio can go. So I see that trend. And then I see probably in this space consolidation. There's only a handful of large players. Beyond that, there's a lot of smaller fragmented players. And in those kind of spaces, you eventually see other consolidation.
Sure. Nope, nope, absolutely. And then I know you mentioned AI briefly a few minutes ago. Like, how are you guys, I guess, just observing and like potentially integrating that? I know it's an ever changing, I guess, fluid.
Yeah.
um,
It's for me, it's a really interesting topic when you look at your own company and your own roadmaps. Um, I think for us, it's about really developing specific use cases and having the customer drive this. I was at a conference 6 months ago. It was a smaller conference with about 50 vendor suppliers that are there. And I went around to each booth, and about 45 of the 50 suppliers that were there had the word AI on their banners and on their information. And I really wondered how many of them were actually doing something with AI. And I don't believe it was the majority of them. And so we've already have our first use cases are out. We're trying to listen to, I'm a big believer in listening to the customer. So understanding their business challenges and their problems. And we're building use cases tied to specific customer challenges. Let's not kid ourselves. RPA, robotics and machine learning, has been around for 20 years. AI is just the next evolution of what's going on. And so we showed some of that. We showcased some of those use cases at our summit last week. We're going to showcase more as we move forward. But this will help our customers be smarter, quicker. And again, it's about being predictive and not reactive. So the next year will be very active from a Solifi perspective.
yeah, you've mentioned that. You mentioned the predictive versus reactive a couple times, and that's just a philosophy that I would say that the traditional, I guess, technology organization, equipment finance, whether if it's third party or actually a finance company, they've been traditionally reactive. Um, so the fact that you're thinking that through, just in my opinion, it's a breath of fresh air, because it seems like everyone's just like, oh, well, what about this? And it's like, no, 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 we'll react when it happens. And it's like, come on, we're already behind.
And I would add one other comment there too. When you think of that from a predictive perspective, the layperson thinks when you layer in AI, then it's all done and it all takes care of itself. The reality is you still need humans to be strategic, to feed the system and kind of grow the system as part of that. And so it is a paradigm shift in infusing the technology, but then enabling today's workforce to kind of advance it in the right ways. And you can layer in that AI, but if we don't have the right people, it doesn't help you inside that process.
Right? And people have to stop fighting it. It's not going to hurt you. It's only going to make you more efficient. I mean, our team leverages it across all of our calls. I mean, you don't no longer have to take notes. Sit
Yeah.
there and it summarizes everything. You still have to
Yeah.
make sure
And
if you misses it.
there were some big company executives who 18 months ago said, AI won't eliminate your job, but it will prevent you from getting your next job if you're not AI smart to be able to kind of work with it from a technology perspective.
I think of the time it saves me. Now, granted, you have to, like you said, there has to be a human component to it. You can't just sit there and say, okay, yeah, whatever you said, just copy paste go. Because, but yeah, no, just makes everyone more efficient. Dan, I agree 100%. Um, so I'm gonna shift gears one more time here to kind of the state of the economy and kind of what that does for technology organizations like Solify. Uh, any thoughts there?
Well, I think one of the things that you always can count on in the economy is every 7, 8, 10 years, you're going to have changes and bumps in the road, right? I don't think this is um, as dramatic in any way, shape, or form from 2007, 2008, or 99 to 2000, but it is a changing times. I think macro perspective, I think people are looking for business owners and leaders are looking for direction. So there might have been a little bit of slowness. I mean, sometimes when that stuff happens and you're looking at software decisions, they may be pushed for a quarter or two. And so there is a little bit of that going on. But I think already there has been a settling out. Obviously, what's gone on with tariffs has had an impact. But again, I can already see that starting to settle out with some of the changes just in the last 30 days. And again, I think for this industry, honestly, it's only going to, as I said earlier, promote more lease and loan activity as prices go up. People still need to conduct business and do things to grow their business. And so I don't see any significant detriment. I think lastly, also in periods of uncertain times, those companies need to use technology to grow their business. So it's a great time to hop in the cloud and say, how can I grow my portfolio as part of it? And at Solifi, it's not just about our software. If you think about our open finance platform, it not only opens you up with APIs to technology, but it opens you up to marketplaces and all the different kind of other vendors that you can connect to in our system. And I can talk more about that. And that probably will lead into a partnership discussion. But that technology helps in times of uncertainty as well.
Sure. And on the consulting side, we're not seeing, people are obviously cautiously optimistic, which is completely understandable, but people aren't afraid to write a check if it means it goes to the right thing. But getting another FTE approved or getting multiple FTEs approved when you can leverage technology, that can do what a company does today, but you can double your output just by leveraging better technology. I mean, we're definitely seeing a lot of that now. Even back in 2007 to 2009, when I was a service provider, people were like shutting their doors. People were really, it was what the Great Recession. But people bought into technology because it allowed them to skinny down without making huge capital investments in people.
Yeah, for sure. And it's about being more, it's about really taking a more strategic view of your business is really what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. People just need to be able to leverage it. I know sometimes it's the struggle, as you mentioned earlier, people on these 30 to 40-year-old systems, and it's like, okay, what single point of brilliance is going to bring you down? Like, you're not thinking about, like, let's have that conversation. And
Absolutely.
especially if people are scaling back originations or whatever, it allows them to focus on the technology.
Well, and when you use that technology, what used to take you years maybe to roll something out in today's day and age with agile services functions and agile infrastructure with large cloud computing companies, hyperscalers. We're an AWS shop. We can roll someone out from an agility perspective very, very quickly because you can throttle up and down.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you for that. Next topic I want to have is kind of like the partnership approach to customer success. I guess that's probably just a good way of putting it, right? You were a customer success manager before. You understand the customer journey and how important that is. Because as I'm sure that you saw last week in the UK, right? The customers, if you bring a prospect to a customer event, it's the easiest sales job ever, because then you get to be around other customers, see no relationship's 100% perfect. I don't care what you're selling, right? But it's what happens in those times. And when you get those people in a room, like-minded, they get to share those ideas.
Yes.
So I guess where I'm going with that, Dan, is traditionally, I guess in my last 20 years, the software organizations and equipment finance like to control the entire customer journey, from the software to the implementation to the support. And while I understand what that means from like a revenue perspective, right? We all have revenue objectives we have to hit. I don't necessarily think that's best for the end all customer journey, right? Software companies get paid to make the software as best they can, and they create new software and enhance it. Sometimes the customer gets left behind. So just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on the partnership approach to customer, journeys.
Yeah, I am very passionate about partnerships, and I'm even more passionate about customer success and customer journey. So maybe we can blend those two together. I'll start on a partnership
Absolutely.
perspective, and then I'll lead to customer success. I think any software company is always going to have a need for their own, to some degree, their own functional portions of their organization, be it development, services specifically, and customer support. I mean, you're an original manufacturer or developer of your own software. You have to have some of those pieces. That said, I don't believe in today's hyper fast technology world that you can scale fast enough without partnerships and without going outside of your system, right? You need to do that kind of stuff. So, Solifi has always had partners, but I'm taking that to a different global level and really growing it. So I think of partnerships in probably three buckets. I think of product and technology partners. I think of consulting system integrators and delivery partners. And then I think of resellers. Today, Solifi has had for a number of years a lot of product and technology providers, right? We don't need to go through the list of names, but it can be an Experian, it can be a DocuSign, it can be a Vertex. So we have plenty of those. On the services side, you could take, Tamarack as an example. We have a handful of those, but we want more and more of those partners to augment our existing numbers of our own professional services folks. Sometimes because the customer wants that, sometimes because we have the need to grow in other regions, sometimes we just want to split the services in different ways. So that's the second component. And then, quite honestly, thirdly, as we grow the business, we not only want to be selling this software through our own sales organization, we want resellers who are going to give us scale. And so I'm in the process with the team of advancing that global strategy. To have a global partner strategy, you have to support them the right way. What's the experience for the partner? So content sites, demo sites, you have to certify them on your technology. You have to co-sell with them. You have to brand with them. And so we're building that entire infrastructure to build it out on a global perspective. So that's part A. Part B, which probably should have been part A, is customer experience. The SaaS world is very different than the traditional on-prem world. On-prem world, we all used to sell software. You would package it up, you would deliver it, you would have your maintenance releases however many times a year. You didn't interact with the customer that much. You and I know, Jesse, in today's day and age, and I don't think everybody really understood this 10 years ago, but when you're in a SaaS world, software as a service, it's 7 by 24. That means your application needs to be up all the time. That means that you have to defend malfeasance from people who may want to hack your systems. That means you have to have user-friendly systems. That means that your access cannot go down. And so customer experience is really critical. And I think we've shown at 97% GRR that we're doing that, but we're going to grow that with more people to support that. So CSMs, customer support managers, to help those customers. We're growing our customer office. So we're doing that. We're looking at health and dashboards for the customer to understand their adoption, their level of success, their challenges. We're looking at that journey. Some of our products may have 100 touch points in them. How do we go back and look at those touch points and say, reimagine those from a customer perspective, not from a Solifi perspective? So we could probably spend an hour on customer experience and customer journey. We will have a maniacal focus on that over the next 5 years, and then bleed that into a partnership strategy. And I think we can help our customers grow and get to the next level.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing that. Dan. 100% on board with that. And I think that's where a lot of organizations just, they can't see through the lens of their clients and they just focus on what they think that they want. It's not, it's not a great formula for long-term success, that's for sure.
No, I think we all as software leaders and executives always have to be pushing on what's the lens from the customer perspective. I mean, we have to have an opinion. We build software to certain specs, but if it starts with us, that's not the way to do it. It has to start with the customer.
Sure. And I'm sure we'll be learning some of these things coming up at the Solifi Summit in Minneapolis. What we got when this releases, I think it'll be a week from today.
Yep,
So
we just had our UK, very successful UK summit in London last week. It was all about some of those things in customer experience, and our summit here starts in Minneapolis in June 3rd. I think it'll have warmed up in Minnesota by then. So excited to spend the time with the customers and the partners in Minneapolis.
perfect, perfect. Looking forward to, my team is looking forward to being with the Solifi teams and clients in a couple weeks as well, Dan. So I asked everyone who comes on the program to give me a little fun fact about themselves, or in the fact that you travel at 1.37 out of 52 weeks outside of work and I guess travel for work. What do you like to do, Dan?
Uh, Fun fact, I'm a former athlete and still dabble in being an athlete in my at my young age. I'm still a competitive basketball player and tennis player to a big degree. And I believe in those people who like to compete, who like to win and don't like to lose, make great business people. I like to, in my own organizations, hire a lot of people who are like that. And so I guess my fun fact is I'm still very competitive at this age. And the juices and the passion still flow to do that kind of stuff. And I think I will always be that way. And when I'm not that way, I probably won't be in business any longer. So that's probably my fun fact, Jesse.
That's a good way of phrasing it. Now, tennis, does that mean you'll go down a little bit to pickleball just to appease some of those people
Oh,
that aren't
no,
competitive
nope,
tennis players?
nope,
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 that's
nope,
that's a hard
no,
no.
no down speaking to the pickleballers of the world. Um, God love you, but I am a traditional tennis player, and some of the traditional tennis players don't play pickleball, so I do not play pickleball.
Had to ask the question. Sorry.
Fair question. Fair question.
Um, I guess my last question I have for you, Dan, is why should someone want to do business with Dan Corazzi and Solifi?
Why do you want to do business with Dan Corazzi and Solifi? I think it's probably more Solifi, but I'll answer the Dan question. And so, Jesse, I live by five pillars. Um, Trust and honesty being number one, clear and open communications being number two, accountability being number three, leading by example being number four, and having a bit of fun as number five. And so I look my customers in the eye and say, I do all of those things. And if you can believe in it, you can see in me and our teams that we deliver on those promises, then you can feel pretty comfortable that you want to do business with me. And so I've always believed in those things for 25, 30 years, and I'll never stop doing those things and making sure that customers can trust me. And when I say something, that I and my organization are going to do those things. So that's my way of doing business.
Perfect, sir. Well, Dan, it's been a pleasure I guess, meeting and getting to know you today. Congratulations on your first four, going on 5 months at Solifi. Excited for the trajectory of the organization with you at the helm, sir, and look forward to meeting you in person here in a couple weeks.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for the time, Jesse. And let's carve out some time in lovely Minneapolis.
All right, sounds good, sir. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.